gathered here today for the discussions of the Time Use Survey, a significant initiative that provides deep insights into how people in our country allocate their time across work, care, learning, and leisure. We are honored to have with us an esteemed set of dignitaries, scholars, policymakers, and participants who will enrich this occasion with their presence and contributions. We are privileged to be joined by the distinguished personalities whose presence adds immense value to our events. I request the dignitaries to take the seat on the dais. Former Cabinet Secretary Shri K.M. Chandrasekhar, Dr. Saurabh Garg, Secretary, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, Dr. Indira Harve, former Director, Center for Development Alternatives, Professor C. Veeramani, Director, Center for Development Studies, Ms. Geeta Singh Rathore, Director General, NSS, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, Dr. Chandramani Sharma, Additional Director General, CQCD, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. Please welcome our dignitaries with a big round of applause. To express our gratitude and appreciation for their invaluable presence, we would like to present each of our dignitaries with a token of our esteem. I first request Shri K.M. Chandrasekhar, former Cabinet Secretary, to accept our token of gratitude extended by Shri M.S. Subramanya Rao, Deputy Director General, CQCD. I request Dr. Saurabh Garg, Secretary of MoSPI, to accept our token of gratitude extended by Shri Vibish E.M., DDG, RO, Thiruvananthapuram. I request Dr. Indira Harve, Professor, CFDA, to accept our token of gratitude extended by Ms. Naushita N.A., Director, CQCD. I request Professor C. Veeramani, Director, CDS, to accept our token of gratitude extended by Shri Pankaj Kumar, Deputy Director, CQCD. I request Ms. Geeta Singh Rathore, Director General, NSS, to accept our token of gratitude extended by Shri Nireet K. Kurian, Deputy Director, CQCD. I request Dr. Chandramani Sharma, ADG, CQCD, to accept our token of gratitude extended by Shri Nikhil Kumar, Deputy Director, CQCD. Thank you all. To begin the day on an auspicious note, I invite our dignitaries on stage to kindly join in the ceremonial lighting of the lamp. May this light be a symbol of knowledge, clarity, and the path ahead in our pursuit of inclusive and meaningful research. Thank you, esteemed dignitaries. To formally welcome our distinguished gathering, may I now invite Ms. Geeta Singh Rathore, Director General of the National Sample Survey, to deliver the welcome address. She has held several key positions, including Additional Director General at the Household Survey Division of the National Statistic Office, and has worked in National Accounts Division of NSO, MoSPI.
Good morning. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all to this Data User Conference of Time Use Survey 2024. A warm welcome to our distinguished guests, colleagues, researchers, and all data users gathered today here. This year is also special as we celebrate 75 years of the National Sample Survey. It's a legacy of reliable, innovative, and policy-relevant data. Today's conference is part of that journey. It is my privilege to extend a very warm welcome to Shri K.M. Chandrasekhar, Sir, former Cabinet Secretary and our esteemed Chief Guest, whose decades of public service and administrative wisdom has shaped governance in India. We are deeply honored to have him grace this occasion. Welcome, sir. A special welcome to Dr. Saurabh Garg, our Secretary, whose vision and leadership at MoSPI continues to inspire us to provide timely and relevant data to guide policy decisions. Welcome, sir. We are honored to have with us Dr. Indra Hirve, Director, Center for Development Alternatives, Ahmedabad, who will deliver the keynote address. Her pioneering work on time use, labor, and gender economics is important for both research and policy in India. Welcome, ma'am. I am also delighted to welcome Professor C. Veeramani, Director of the Center of Development Studies, our valued partner in organizing this program. Your support has been instrumental in making this conference possible. I welcome you. A warm welcome to our distinguished panelists, speakers from esteemed institutions, representatives from MoSPI, line ministries, research institutes, universities, and international organizations. Your presence highlights the spirit of collaboration that is essential for evidence-based policy making. If time is money, then the Time Use surveys India's balance sheet. It counts the invisible hours that sustain our households and our nations. Let me share a story. Imagine one household in 2019 and the same household again in 2024. In 2019, the woman of house spent nearly 5 hours a day on domestic work and another 2 on caregiving. The man, by contrast, spent less than 2 hours on such work, but about 6 hours in paid employment. Even in travel, he moved almost twice as much as her. These numbers showed a simple truth. Women were carrying a double burden. Fast forward to 2024, the woman is still busy, but signs of change are visible. The man is pitching in more at home. She herself is spending more time in paid work, especially in urban areas. Both live in more digital India, with remote work, online learning, and digital leisure shaping their days. Hybrid work has even reduced commuting for both. This is power of time use survey. It doesn't just give us statistics, it tells us the story of change. A story where unpaid work still falls heavily on women, but also where roles are shifting and technology is reshaping daily life. As we deliberate today, our focus is on translating TUS findings into actionable insights for child care and elder care support, for gender equality, for labor market, for infrastructure and social protection. This is about ensuring that the hidden contribution of millions in India, particularly women, are valued and recognized. I once again extend a warm welcome to all of you. I look forward to rich discussions and meaningful exchanges as we together explore what the Time Use Survey reveals about India, its people and their time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. It is now my privilege to invite Professor C. Veeramani, Director of the Center for Development Studies, to address the gathering.
Our chief guest today, Sri K.M. Chandrasekhar, former Cabinet Secretary and also former Chairman of Center for Development Studies, Dr. Saurabh Gar, Secretary MoSPI, Ms. Geeta Singh Rathore, DG NSSO, Dr. Indira Hirve, who was a pioneer in time use studies in our country, officers of MoSPI, faculty of CDS, researchers, students and all participants. A very warm welcome and good morning to all of you. So let me start by asking a simple question. What is the most valuable resource for any country? So many people will immediately say it may be gold, oil, natural resource, or some people say simply money. But the answer is it is none of them. It is the time that people have. So time is the only resource which is most equally distributed across all countries and all individuals. But what really matters is how this time is utilized, how people spend their 24 hours which is available to each one of them. So the way that they spend their time, the 24 hours in terms of paid work, unpaid work, learning, leisure or all other activities, that tell us important things about various issues like inequality, gender, development, care economy, and overall well-being. So much of the work that keeps households and the economy running never shows up in GDP. Like for example, activities like cooking, caregiving, fetching water, volunteering, all these activities remain invisible in most statistics. Yet they are very vital for our society and economy, especially like a country like India, which has a large informal sector. So time use survey helps us make this hidden economy visible. But this is not only about measurement. To design better policies for job, education, health, care economy, gender equality, etc., we must first ask the important question, how do people actually spend their time? The time use survey provides the mirror. It captures both market and non-market work, help us understand work, life balance, and allows us to track progress towards, for example, sustainable development goals, etc. So MoSPI conducted its first all India level time use survey in 2019, which was an important landmark. With the 2024 round, MoSPI is taking the next big step forward. And that is again at a time when work, family, roles and technology are changing very rapidly. Now for CDS, this moment has a special meaning. Our founder, Professor K.N. Raj, one of India's finest economists, made pioneering contributions to India's statistical system. When he was at the Reserve Bank of India, he prepared India's first balance of payment statistics. That was a remarkable contribution. And also he made important contributions to estimates of savings and capital formation in our country. He also made important contributions in shaping India's planning process, with his direct contributions in India's first 5-year plan. And he firmly believed that good policy must be based on good data, and that principle has guided CDS for more than 5 decades. It was through such evidence-based work that CDS drew global attention to what came to be known as the Kerala model of development, which is a statistical outlier, which basically means a state has achieved remarkable achievements in health, education and social outcomes, even with the modest level of income, which is a statistical outlier which the CDS work highlighted long time back. And that work laid the foundation for the Human Development Index, later developed by the UNDP. So CDS has been a leader in research on gender and work, women's employment, unpaid care, migration, and the care economy. These are exactly the issues highlighted by the Time Use survey, making this collaboration with the MoSPI especially meaningful for us. By bringing together data producers, researchers, and policymakers, we can make sure that this rich data set is not only created but actively used by researchers to advance research and shape policies that promote equity and inclusion. On behalf of CDS, I thank MoSPI for trusting us in this partnership. And again, I welcome you all again to this important event and look forward to rich discussions ahead.
Thank you, Professor Veeramani, for your address and for highlighting the academic significance of this initiative. To share his opening remarks, we are honored to have with us Dr. Saurabh Ghar, Secretary, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. I kindly invite him to take the podium. He has previously held key positions in the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment and served as the Chief Executive Officer of UIDAI.
Thank you, Mr. Chandrasekhar, Dr. Hirve, Dr. Veeramani, my colleagues Geeta and Chandramani, and all the researchers, academicians, and persons interested in this subject who are here today. Thank you all for coming. I was in fact told that the interest was so large that we had to stop registrations in between, but obviously you can tell your friends who could not attend that we'll be putting the deliberations on the YouTube so people would have the opportunity to know about it and in case they're interested. I'll really not focus so much on the time use survey, but I'll do mention a few things because all the panelists and we have a stellar set of people who have worked in this field who would be talking about it, including of course Dr. Hirve, who's the pioneer in this sector. But just a few points of the TUS and then I'll focus a little bit more on what in the Ministry of Statistics we hope to be doing going forward, what we've done and what we hope to be doing. The time use survey, the second one came out last year in 2024. We started it in 2019 and that too after a number of deliberations in which many of you had participated, and we had the benefit of what the time use survey should talk about. But just to mention that internationally too, about every 5 years is the standard practice for bringing out a time use survey. For example, sorry, I touched something. So every 5 years is in Canada they bring it out every 5 to 7 years. In Australia it's nearly 5 years. In Japan it is so. So I think that's seems to be the normal standard, except the US, they bring out a time use survey annually. So I've not looked at their time use survey in detail, but I'm sure many of you would have. But perhaps it doesn't have the level of detail that we are able to have in every 5 years. The second thing I just want to mention that increasingly focus is not restricted only to an economic parameter like the GDP to look at the status of a country. Quality of life and well-being is increasingly being talked about, and that's where a thing like the time use survey helps to know what kind of activities people are engaged in. And in fact, care sector, which is becoming increasingly more relevant with an aging population globally and over the next few decades in India, that sector has become so much more important to know what kind of levels of unpaid domestic, unpaid care, how well, in many countries that work is monetized, but it gives a sense of that, and that's an important part of goal 5 of the SDGs also. And of course, the gender imbalance in many of these activities has already been mentioned, which I'm sure other speakers would be talking about. So I think to get a better understanding of the socio-economic status of the people, and to get a better sense of the economy, this time use survey is extremely useful. And as Dr. Veeramani mentioned, that it's a resource which is initially egalitarian, everyone has the same time, but what are the skill levels, educational levels, and how you can use it, and I think that's where a lot of the differences come from. One last point on the time use survey, just to highlight some 2 or 3 data points regarding Kerala which are there in the time use survey. The average time spent on unpaid, volunteer, trainee and unpaid work is 6 times the national average in Kerala. So I would put it very, very positively that there's a lot more volunteer work, a lot more training activities that people seem to be doing in Kerala. Obviously, this would require greater study, which I'm sure many of you might have already done. And the second data point, which I do want to mention, that the participation rate in culture, leisure, mass media, sports activities is the highest in Kerala among all states in the country. So I think I just wanted to mention these 2 data points because these come out directly from the time use survey. But a bit on what exactly we are hoping to do and what's the objective of holding these kind of stakeholder consultations. From our part, our focus, in fact, our tagline of our ministry is data for development. And that really summarizes the focus of what we are trying to do is ensure more data-driven policy making, data-driven decision making. And with that view in mind, we bring out a large number of data points. Every quarter we bring out the GDP figures, which gives the growth rate of the GDP. We bring out monthly the inflation numbers, which are used for the monetary policy. We bring out the index for industrial production, which gives a sense of what kind of industrial growth that is happening. Regularly, we have the consumption expenditure surveys, which give a sense of the level of consumption of people, how people are doing in terms of poverty, in terms of analysis of how nutritionally well the households are moving ahead. And apart from these, we have a host of other regular surveys. And in all of them, we want them to be more intimately utilized for research, for decision making in the government, and that's one of the major objectives that we are having this. And it's heartening to see the kind of response that we get to these data sharing workshops, if I can put it in one sense, so that people are aware of this data and then they use it much more fruitfully to have a more focused evidence-based policy making. The second focus that we are working on is how to make our data much more granular. We have been, for example, publishing GDP at the national level. We have been doing that at a state level. Our focus now is whether we can have district domestic product so that even at the state, the decision makers have data available to see how different districts are doing. And to that extent, all our surveys that we have started from January of this year have the ability to produce district level estimates. And that is what we are working with the state governments to ensure that data is available at the district level, which would, I'm sure, help to make these decisions so much more targeted and focused. The second broad area that we are looking at is how to improve the frequency of data that is made available. We had the labor market data, the unemployment, employment data, which used to come out once in a year, quarterly for urban. Now we bring it out monthly. So it gives much better sense of what is happening, and every state, every decision maker can look at that data and see what is being done. We did not have until a few years a better sense of the informal economy. We didn't have a formal survey, but now we have an annual survey of unincorporated sector enterprises. Since it's that sector which employs a large proportion of our labor and has significant value add in the economy also. We started that 3 years back, and now from this year we are bringing out the data quarterly rather than annually. I'm just highlighting these two just to give an idea that going forward, that's our focus. And the third is how to ensure that the time lag of data from when it is collected to when it is disseminated is reduced. So what used to earlier take us 8 to 9 months on an annual survey, now we ensure that it's done in 90 days. Quarterly survey, quarterly data within 45 days at the end of the quarter, and monthly data within 15 days at the end of the quarter. So with our focus on granularity, with our focus on frequency, with our focus on timeliness, what we are trying to ensure is that data should be available for people to be able to use it and use it more effectively for decision making. And the last thing that we are focusing on a lot more is doing new surveys. We did not have an income survey, and we hope to start an income survey last year. We did not have a service sector survey, which we are planning to do last year. And of course, looking at how once we have decided a survey, we do it regularly. So it not only helps researchers to do their research, but more effectively it can be used for decision making. With these words, I just want to thank once again Dr. Veeramani and his team for agreeing to do this. And this also is a focus going forward to increase our collaboration with research institutions. We have done in the past year a number of such stakeholder consultations, brainstormings, data users conferences, and all of them we ensure that we do it with a locally based institution. And we hope to come back out here with some other survey, with some other data points which is of interest. And lastly but not the least, thank you to all of you who have taken the time, effort, not only come from within Trivandrum, or many of you have come from different states for this. So thank you, and look forward to this continued engagement, for which our last point, we also launched a mobile app so that data is available for you at any time. Of course, our website is there, which we have improved it, but now we have a mobile app both for Android and Apple phones. And please have a look at that, and we would be happy to improve our surveys, improve our dissemination methods with the feedback that we get from here. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Raj, for your insightful remarks and presenting our vision of how this survey can contribute to policy in practice. We are now privileged to have with us today our chief guest, Sri K. Chandrasekhar, former Cabinet Secretary to the Government of India. May I invite him to deliver the special address. In a career spanning of 5 decades, he is known for his administrative acumen and has contributed significantly to policy making and governance. He was the founder chairman of the Spices Board, India's ambassador to the WTO, and the Union Revenue Secretary. In recognition of the service, he was honored with the Kerala Shri Award, the state's 3rd highest civilian award in 2023. Welcoming you, sir.
Thank you very much, and good morning to all of you. I heard very closely the speeches until now, and I am very glad that the Dr. Saurabh Garg and his team have taken the initiative to introduce many more statistical tools which would be available to researchers to see where India is. So that's a great thing, and it's also wonderful that the time lapse between the collection of data and the dissemination of data has been considerably reduced, and he proposes to do even more of that. These are very significant developments which I think mean a lot for India. India, as you know, we have set for ourselves a goal. We have set a goal of Vikasit Bharat by 2047. Now, it is expected that the GDP will grow to $30 trillion by then. But then the GDP by itself does not give a holistic picture of the growth of an economy, of the social development that has taken place. So we need many more initiatives. By the way, I'm glad that you're doing an income survey also, because income, particularly state-wise, is not really GSDP divided by population. It's more than that. And that would be something which I think in Kerala in particular, where we get large remittances from abroad, we'll be able to get a better hold on what's happening. Now, we have any process of development. Dr. Garg also said it, and I repeat it, is not just GDP. Number of other parameters will have to change, whether it is in social development or in the human development indices or in sustainable development goals. All these form part of growth. So statistics should provide the foundation for research to come out with adequate conclusions on whether we are going forward or whether we are focusing on the wrong things. And the time use survey, I think, is a very important aspect of that. I found that I took some time after coming back from Coimbatore yesterday to look at your 24 survey. And it says there that the time use survey provides a framework for measuring time disposition by the population in different activities. Now, this is very, very important for any country, because we need to know whether real growth is taking place. If incomes go up, if as we can see today, 1% of the population gets about 40% of the total GDP that they get, and the lower 50% get much less, 13% or so. Now we need a different disposition where everybody grows. That is the objective which is stated by the Prime Minister and by many others. And it is for statistics to provide the answers, to give them a clue to how policy should be formulated. The time use survey can be a very important aspect of this analysis, because time use changes with the level of development. We are one of the very few countries, I am told Australia, Japan, Republic of Korea, New Zealand, US, China. These are some of the countries that look at time use survey. And it is, the 24 survey shows that 75% of males and 25% of females participated in employment. One of the parameters for change will be the level of employment, gender-wise. If women are able to find more jobs, this percentage increases from 25%. That shows we are going forward. The other data which came out was that unpaid domestic services, women spend about 315 minutes. I think it's per day, no? 315 minutes in caregiving as well as unpaid services. In caregiving, 41% of women are engaged in caregiving. Now, if we are able to, any process of growth, if you compare it with the US, you'll find that there is a difference. More employment of women, less employment in household unpaid services, and the focus shifts with development. Then it is seen that 89% of children 6 to 14, they participated in learning activities. 89% looks good, but we perhaps, as this survey gets more statistically relevant, then we will find what are the skills that we are imparting. Even our education system, what skills are we imparting? Are these skills enough for them to contribute to the economy? These are things that come out of statistics. Then it's seen that employment and related activities, 41% is in rural areas, 40% in urban areas, something which is roughly the same, but this has to go up. And unpaid domestic services by household members is pretty high, 44%, I believe, and unpaid caregiving services is 21%. Now, all these things will change over time, and we will be able to get a fix on if we are going to $30 trillion by 2047. What are we planning on these indices? It's not for the statistics department to do this. It is for you people, and it is for the government departments involved in policy to identify what we are aiming for. This would require statewide comparison. That is one way. We also need to compare with all the other countries I mentioned: Australia, Japan, Republic of Korea, New Zealand, US, China. How have they changed? And what is the rate of change in India? I think this will give us a very clear idea where we are going. Merely by adding trillions to our GDP, we are not going to be clear whether India is growing the right way or not. So I am really happy that you have, I believe the target 5.4 I find, recognize and value unpaid care and domestic work through the provision of public services, infrastructure and social protection policies, and the promotion of shared responsibility within the household and the family is nationally appropriate. This is one of the targets of this particular survey. So I think I'm very happy that Dr. Garg is making changes in this department, and he understands the importance of, he is himself a very distinguished person. He has got a doctorate in international economics from Johns Hopkins Institute, and so he is the kind of man who can see both sides, and that's why this kind of development is taking place. And from what I hear, he has made a number of changes already to the statistics department. Many of them he mentioned today. So overall, I think this department can contribute in a very concrete way to the growth of India, to the achievement of our objectives over the next 30 to 40 years. And the fact that he is now talking to the actual people who are going to use this data and get their feedback shows that the department is open-minded and would like to work with you so that we really can make use of this data. That is up to you and the department together. I'm sure the department will be open to any suggestions that any of you make. I'm glad to see the interest that has been shown here. I believe they even had to stop the registration at a particular point of time when they couldn't just, there were so many people wanting to come for this seminar. So I wish you, all of you, the very best, and I hope this will be the harbinger of a new development process, a new growth process, which encompasses all the people of India. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your inspiring words and for placing today's discussion in the larger context of governance and national development. To deliver the keynote address, we are delighted to have Dr. Indira Harve, Director of the Center for Development Alternatives. Earlier she served as director of CFDA. She has been National Fellow of the Indian Society of Social Science Research, New Delhi, an expert of labor markets, poverty, gender and time use studies. She has served on several national and international committees and continues to advise the ILO, UN Statistical Division, UNDP and governments worldwide. I request her to kindly take over the podium.
You can remove this. Respected dignitaries sitting on the dais and colleagues and friends who are interested in this field. Now, let me start by saying that time use data are now emerging as an important source of data for integrating paid and unpaid work with the macroeconomy. That means in macroeconomic policies, in macroeconomic modeling, in GDP, and so on. So this is something which is coming in a big way, and we should be prepared for that. And in that sense, this expansion of macroeconomy, which is expected in UNSNA 2025, we have to be prepared for that, and I'm really happy that my focus, of course, here is on Time Use Survey 2024. Let me start by saying that after 20 years after the pilot survey, we had first All India Time Use Survey in 2019. The other one is 2024, which means we are institutionalizing this survey in the National Statistical System, and this is something very positive, and I really congratulate the Statistics Department for this work. The question is now of quality of data. I mean, LMIC, that means low and medium income countries in the world, have one problem when they conduct time use surveys, is that very small number of them has been successful in producing quality data. As the surveys, I mean, World Bank has done survey, ILO has done survey, people like myself and many other experts have done surveys in developing countries as to how they produce time use data and what are the problems, etc. There were two kinds of problems which were found. One was the component of time use surveys had some problems in terms of, the components of time use survey. I don't want to go into that. And the second is data collection. There were problems with data collection. Now the first set of problem isn't difficult in the sense that now UNSD has come out with a new guidebook on how to conduct time use survey, and that by in 24 they have come out with a guidebook, and that guidebook will definitely help in designing the components, different components of time use survey, and that should not be difficult. The problem is about the quality of data. And not only India, I'm not talking about Indian time use only, but many LMIC have found that quality of time use data is a problem. The problem is that they start very well, but when it comes to recall, because they have to report to interviewers about what they did in the last 24 hours. And that requires recall, and the recall is a big problem. And that's why a large number of countries have taken shortcuts, and India also has done the same. I'm not going into the details of the faults of time use survey of 24, but I straight away go to the recommendations as to how we can improve our data. To start with, let's start with objectives. We have limited objective in India, paid and unpaid work in details of men and women, etc. But when it's to go beyond this, the objective should be to implement ILO's concept of work and categories of work. This should be the aim. Now ILO has produced a module in which modified labor survey come time use module, that is what they are recommending. But that's also not good enough. And I have a paper in which I have written for the working paper in Levy Economics Institute, where I have shown that this is a problem, because they all recommend light time use surveys for developing countries, including India. And light time use surveys are not comprehensive. They don't give you complete. So we have to find out an alternative, and we'll discuss this later on. Second objective should be how to measure underutilization of labor. This is something very important for our economy, but this time use survey, we cannot do that because it requires additional information in the background questionnaire as well as in the time use questionnaire. Third objective should be SDGs, and particularly SDG 5.4 actually, where we talk about gender equality. But gender equality, that SDG, Sustainable Development Goal, also includes valuation of unpaid work. Now, valuation of unpaid work cannot be done just by labor, but you have to consider that in terms of capital use, technology use, depreciation of capital, and whole lot of things that we have not been able to do. For example, we have data on assets, but ownership of assets by men and women, we don't have. We don't have other information, and that's why we are not in a position with our data to value unpaid work the way national income accounts does. If you do that, then this can be merged with GDP at a later stage. And that's what we are aiming, and that's what people at the global level also are aiming. The next objective is about supervisory care. Nancy Falbre, which wrote a paper on this and which was accepted by ILO, and they have clearly mentioned, and we all now accept, that passive care or supervisory care is something very important, because it adds to the care the time, which is important, in addition to other care time that we calculate. And for that, one has to have mixed mode time use survey. I'm not going to details of that, but we have to have that, then only we can calculate care in a comprehensive way. But we have not been able to do so. So now the question, the other recommendation I have is that everybody, and a lot of experts at the global level are aware that developing countries are not very successful in producing quality data. And that's why what they need is simplification of the time use data and less expensive time use surveys, so that with rigorous methods, we can produce quality time use data. Now, how can we do that? There are ways and ways of doing it. I have a paper on this also. That, first thing we want is no proxy. We have 40% people who have not reported themselves about their time use, but their friends, relatives, neighbors. This cannot be done because they won't know how the person has spent time use, and that is not allowed. So no proxy is the first condition. You should go in the morning, in the evening, and substitute that person very, very carefully. Then only you can collect the data. The second is about what we do is that we have to make the data collection simple. There are several recommendations in this. First is that we should have time use survey where we have just 1 day time use survey, not 2 days. Reduce the work so that we can focus on the quality. Then we should have only 1 person from the family. That's the main thing is randomization. The sample should be representative. And many countries are doing it. Very large number of European countries, as well as Thailand, etc. countries are doing this. So 1 person from 1 family, and instead of 2 days, 1 day, and then 2 visits. This will help us in getting the problem of recall solved. They will be able to tell us about this. Next thing is that interview would visit the respondent 2 times, maybe at 11 and at 7 o'clock in the evening, or whatever is convenient. We have now 10 plus 10 plus 10 or 15 plus 15 kind of a data collection, absolutely arbitrary, and it doesn't really tell you information and how many minutes were actually spent on different activities, isn't it? That should be removed because that doesn't really help us in further calculation and in understanding time use of people. The next is that we should have 3 activities. Instead of 3 activities, we should have 5 activities in the time slot. Because now we are asking for this thing, minutes with 2 visits and reduced work, we should be able to get this data very easily. And there is also one thing that the latest data shows that 85% of Indians use smartphones. Now, if 85% of Indians use smartphone, the remaining also use but they don't own, in that case we can provide them smartphones so that they can note the timings of their activities when we tell them about it and can get actual minutes. Because that's getting actual minutes on time use survey is very important. And we are doing 10 minutes, 15 minutes ad hoc is not correct. Simultaneous activities also, we have to change. We have to ask them about the primary and secondary, and using that, we should have actual minutes spent on simultaneous activities. Simultaneous activities data is extremely important because it talks about real time spent on different activities. And it also talks about time stress. So while measuring time poverty, simultaneous activities also makes a lot of a difference. So that also is important. As far as context variables are concerned, we should follow TUS, International Classification of Time Use Activities, recommendations, where they suggest 4 context variables. One is where, why, in person, and paid and unpaid, and so on. So follow TUS strictly and get 4 context variables so that our details, the quality of data will improve considerably. And finally, UNST has recently come out with a report on modernizing time use survey techniques. We should use that report to modernize it. We are using copy. That's good enough. But there are many other ways you can do that. For example, you can go with a tablet, code your background questionnaire, and collect data so that the time will be reduced, coding time will be reduced, and expenses also will be reduced. So there are many other suggestions UNST has made. One can go through it carefully. In short, the time use methodology that we have adopted can be improved considerably to get actual data, quality data, and we can use it then for further analysis of GDP and macroeconomics and whatever, because this kind of data cannot be used. Now there are 2 things here. ILO has recommended modified labor force survey and light time diary. Now this is something which is not acceptable. I'm sure Neeta would agree with me, because you club all activities into 30-40, which you lose a lot in that. And that means you are providing secondary kind of solution to developing countries as far as implementation of ILO's new concepts is concerned. That should not be done. Why should we accept that? And that's why the recommendation which we have made, that we should use that. Light time diary has a very limited use for developed countries as well as developing countries to confirm some small little thing, but not at a national level. It should not be done in that way. And finally, I would like to say that time use data are getting more and more importance at the global level. Data 2X, which is a an output from UN Foundation, is doing good work in this area. UNST also is doing, and the idea is to merge time use valuation of unpaid work into GDP, and that GDP should be a part of the new macroeconomics. And while analyzing labor market, we should use a different kind of methods, because now the economy has expanded. And that's why you should have read ILO's publication on, it's on what you call unpaid work, or what they call, I don't remember the exact title, but it is basically on the work that is not measured in GDP. So go through that and you will find number of techniques to improve our time use data, and many new economic topics and analysis will happen. World is moving very fast towards expanding the scope of macroeconomic to a higher level. There is also a movement to expand macroeconomics to incorporate natural resources. But at the same time, this is also going on. And if we do not produce quality data, and if we don't produce data that can be used further in economic analysis, then we may be left out of this. And that's why I would like to suggest that we should be ready for the new changes that are taking place at the global level, and we should be able to use this data for making macroeconomic policy, economic policy, labor market analysis, and macroeconomic modeling. So this is just a suggestion as to how we move forward to get the data better and to improve our future of analysis of time use, because we are not able to use this data with 10, 10, 10 and 15, 15 kind of a thing for any further analysis. I'm sorry if I have been a little harsh, but this is something which is for us to go and grab with and be with other countries. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Heve, for the powerful keynote, which has given us a clear sense of the significance and direction of the time use survey. With this, we conclude the inaugural session. I thank all our dignitaries for their valuable words and for gracing this occasion. We now look forward to the technical sessions that will explore the survey findings in depth and discuss their implications. Before we move into the technical sessions, I would like to make an announcement. One of our participants' registration kit got swapped in between. The name is Srijita Nair. If somebody find out any papers in your registration kit which does not belong to you, kindly hand over it to the registration desk. Kindly check into your registration kits. If you find it, if that is not If that is not your registration kit, please kindly hand over it to the registration desk. Thank you. We now move into the technical sessions, which will focus on the time use survey and its practical value for research and policy making. The next set of presentations are organized to give us a concise overview of the TUS and what it covers, a clear explanation of the survey design and methodology, a presentation of key findings including comparisons with previous TUS rounds and the specific utility of TUS data for the household survey division. And lastly, a discussion on the strategic applications and program level usage of the data. I invite Sandeep Kumar Sadhu, Director, Household Survey Division, MoSPI, to take over the session.
Honorable Chief Guest, sir, respected Secretary Sir, DG Madam, and all other dignitaries and participants, a very good morning. So I think a strong foundation for the conference has already been laid in the inaugural session by our eminent speakers and experts, ma'am. So, I'll just build up on that. Most of the things have been covered. So I'll just give a brief idea about the time use survey that MoSPI has been conducted. So in the inaugural session, it was quite emphatically mentioned that why time use survey is important in measuring the unpaid part or invisible part of the economy, especially unpaid domestic and care work. And measurement of such importance is reflected by the target 4 of SDG 5, goal 5, which urges the nations to recognize and value unpaid care and domestic work. So it shows the importance that why we should measure these things, and the TUS comes into picture because TUS is the primary and probably the sole source of data of measuring this unpaid care and domestic work. So envisaging the importance and future demand of TUS data, MoSPI undertook this time use survey for the first time at all India level in 2019, and then we had a second in series in 2024, which recently concluded. The survey in India has been conducted following all international standards and norms given by UNSD and as per our some national contextual things, modified a little bit. The basic features of time use survey that we conducted in India are, it is covered the all persons of age 6 years and above conducting their time use information for last 24 hours, starting from 4 a.m. till the 4 a.m. Next day. And it looked into that person's day by dividing the entire day into half an hour time slots, 30 minutes time slots, capturing all the information that they have performed for at least 10 minutes or more, subject to 3 conditions, 3 activities. The activities that each person performed can be described in many ways, but the codification was performed at 3-digit level of international classification of activities for time use survey. That is a globally used and recommended classification system for activities. Context variables that were used or collected, because context variables are of most importance in time use survey to determine the nature of that work. So context variable at person level that were collected, age, gender, educational status, marital status of the respondents. Apart from that, for activity level, we collected simultaneous activity, whether performed or not. If there are more than one activity, which was the major activity, because as per the respondent's version. Then apart from that, the location of the activity, where it was performed, and paid unpaid status of the reported activity. So these are the context variables that are present in the time use survey data. For any sample survey, the sample size matters, and as per NSS convention, we have a huge survey base covering around 10,000 FSUs, the rural villages or urban blocks, so to say. The data collected from 1.4 lakhs household, almost covering 4.5 lakhs individuals, with a almost equal share of male and females, so that we can get quite a robust estimates for the time use information. Once we collect the data, everything boils down to getting the estimates or parameters of interest for our surveys. So in time use survey, basically there are three primary estimates that we aim to derive. First is participation rate for each of the activities, which is nothing but the percentage of people doing that activity, and then comes time spent. Time spent has two variants. One is time spent per participant, which considers only those persons who have actually done the activity, and time spent per person. This basically doesn't require the person to perform that activity. And if we want to derive the 24 hours distribution over different activities, so we will use this time spent per person. So it will basically give that distribution of 24 hours of the targeted group. Apart from that, we have a very important indicator, SDG 541, that is also derived from time use survey, and it has the same in NSS context also. Summary estimates, I will not deep dive into that because much of this has been already mentioned. Just to highlight few things, although the gender disparity in employment related work, unpaid domestic and care services remains, but some positive developments is that we have some increased level in participation and time spent in employment related activities, for both the genders. And in unpaid caregiving activities, the participation of male has increased in level by almost 4%, which somewhat indicates that males are also sharing the burden of care work at household level. Similar increase we can see in the participation of paid activities in the right bottom panel, where participation of female increased from 17% to almost 21%, 20.6%. For males also, there we can observe some increase compared to 2019 survey. Since this gives the estimate of time used per person, as we are mentioning, and it gives the distribution of 24 hours over different activities. The first panel is for males, first two bars, second is for female, and the lowest bottom two panels are for all persons. So if we see that participation in employment related activities has increased to some extent by both for male and female compared to 2019 and 2024. However, this gap remains, so that is a fact to be seen. But again, time spent in unpaid caregiving activities, for women it has reduced to some extent from 243 to 236 minutes. But the overall trend over 2019 and 2024 remains more or less same, with some positive developments. Since we are standing in God's own country, it makes sense to have a look in the Kerala's time use. The distribution of 24 hours remains more or less as per national context, where the disparity remains in employment, caregiving, unpaid caregiving and unpaid household work between male and female. Few things that would like to highlight here, that working age females from 15 to 59 years females, their participation in employment related activities is a bit higher from national average of 25%. In Kerala, it stands at 26%. Children aged 6 to 14 years, they are spending more time in Kerala compared to national average. It was 413 minutes at national level, whereas in Kerala it is 415 minutes. As Secretary Sir was mentioning, that women in culture and leisure activities, because this indicates somewhat the quality of life or work-life balance. So women in Kerala, participation in such activities is way higher than national average, and they are also spending much more time in such activities. These are some probable or future areas where time use data survey, time use survey data can play an important role. This is basically for the new researchers who are entering this thing, just to intrigue your interest. The time use data is the primary source for measuring the well-being as per upcoming extended accounts of SNA 2025. Also, policy and research, that time use survey remains a pivotal thing to look into the changing working patterns in commuting and transportation policy formulation. Time use survey can play an important role by indicating what amount of time people are spending in commuting and transport activities. Shift in time use survey, as we are regularly seeing the technological intervention, change in social fabric, so this also leads to change in time use pattern of the citizens of a country. So once time use surveys are conducted frequently, so such changes can be very prominent and can be analyzed. Insight into life conditions of different subsection of the people, especially elders, dependent members. So this can throw quite important light on the life conditions of such people. Of course, there are many more use. Just wanted to focus on or highlight few things that TUS data can play an important role. Based on Time Use Survey 2024, we have MoSPI has brought out 2 publications. One is fact sheet on TUS 2024 and a full-fledged report, Time Use Survey in India 2024. Those who are yet to go through that, please go through. It is already available in our website. You can download it anytime. And regarding the data access, it is accessible free of cost in our website. Please visit our website www.mospi.gov.in. There is a link on microdata from where you can download the data without any cost or without any hassle free in any format. It is comfortable in any format. So please do use that. That's all from my side. If there is any question, I would be happy to take. Otherwise, thank you for your time and your participation also.
Any questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Now I request Sandeep Kumar Sadhu, Director, Household Survey Division, to accept our token of gratitude by Sri Ashwindra Gupta, JSO, CQCB. With presentation by Professor Vinod Abraham from the Center for Development Studies, who will provide us with a structured overview of the key themes and to have a discussion on strategic applications and program level uses of data. He is a leading scholar in labor economics with extensive work on employment, informality and gender dimensions of work. His insights will help us anchor today's discussion in empirical evidence and analytical clarity.
Respected dignitaries, what I'm going to do is kind of, since Time Use Survey 2024 has been discussed, what I'm going to do is kind of take you through the literature that has done some work with the Time Use Surveys. Not only on 2024, very less has been published from 2024, but much work has been done using previous surveys. And I'm going to take you through the previous Time Use Surveys, what kind of applications has been done, and I also take you through some of the, not the regular time use surveys, some of the micro level time use surveys that has been done by different scholars and how they kind of inform how we could kind of improve the Time Use Survey 2024 and the future ones as such. So that's what I'm trying to just go through it. Now this is just to give a very brief and broad overview about how the Time Use Survey has, what are the kinds of items that are available. It's self-explanatory over there, how data is collected, and what kind of slots and times are available. That's now looking at the various types of studies on time use. Much of the studies has been looking at the gender differences across time use, how time is used, and of course the first and foremost source is the Time Use Survey itself. Their own publications have some indications on how time use has changed. And of course, the most important, the current time use survey 2024 shows this particular thing. Then the average time that is spent by males and females on employment, that becomes the starkest difference, where males spend about 287 minutes while females spend about 71 minutes. On the other hand, you have females spending about unpaid domestic services for household members just about 24 minutes by males, contrasting that with 236 minutes by females. So that's a big difference. All the others are comparable, but the big difference is in this, right? Work, employment or related activities versus unpaid domestic activities, and then we have also unpaid care services between these. So these are this is the big difference between males and female, gender differences in terms of the time use that we see across. And over time, we use this kind of a thing in terms of employment, again coming from the time use survey itself. Employment related activities between 2019 and 24. Both for males, you do see between the age group 15 to 59, we do see an increase in the time that is spent from 470 to 480. But for females, we do see that for the same age group, there is a rise, but just about by a minute, from 343 to 344. In other words, there is hardly any increase in the time that is spent on employment between the two time periods that are given over there. So that's the kind of evidence that we are getting over time, as well as what is the big difference and over time. So this particular analysis, this kind of analysis would not have been possible without time information at the time use itself. Now, the pioneers of this kind of study has been Professor Hirve herself, and we have this pioneering study done by Hirve and Jose. Both the authors are over here, looking at understanding women's work, published in Feminist Economist. And the theme had been in discussion for quite some time, and this came up as a paper, but the discussion had been there for quite some time about the difference between what the national sample surveys or the periodic labor force surveys measure as work participation rates and what can be seen in data when you start looking at the time use surveys. Of course, the paper shows this. 41% of the 41.6% of the women engaged in collecting water, fuel, fodder, etc., while only 7% of the men. And time use surveys showed a much higher work participation ratio, almost double that of the national sample survey. So the fact that the national sample surveys is an underestimation of women's work, women's participation in work, that is kind of established through the studies that are done through the time use surveys, even though it was in discussion. And the fact that time use surveys came in place in order to counter the participation rates that was given by the national sample surveys, periodic labor force surveys, or the national employment and unemployment surveys that came in place during this particular period. And there has been further evidences on this thing. Now, there has been other studies which shows this difference between males and females in participation rates and all, but this is just an indicative study that I thought we will show this thing. There has also been another set of studies which are looking at impact studies on time use. How does time use change, or what happens to time use with an external intervention? When something comes in, what happens to time use of women actually? I mean, of men and women, but most of the studies are with regard to women itself. And one of the important studies that came about was with regard to the LPG introduction in household. What does LPG do to women's household burden, right? Does it look, now, if we can broadly classify time into paid work, unpaid work, and then leisure time, very broad classifications, then how does the introduction of LPG affect this thing? An interesting study that came about in energy economics. Yes, it does show that LPG introduction does lead to a fall in the time that is spent on a very small rise in the employment time that is spent on employment, a very marginal time increase. You do see this thing, but what really happens is that when LPG is introduced, the number of times you are cooking actually increases. It doesn't reduce the actual cooking time. It actually, what it does is, when you change from firewood to LPG, it reduces it increases the number of times you are cooking, but it doesn't relieve women from cooking itself. So that's the finding that you could, that's one of a very interesting finding, that introduction of something like, or energy transition is leads you to gender advantages as women's for women's work, that needs to be contextualized. It may not be there at all if LPG does not come along with social changes in the social norms, maybe changes in the social norms itself. A similar study was done by one of our MA students in 2023, looking at a very similar aspect. Does access to LPG change women's time allocation? Again, dividing time into 4 different categories, and the time into cooking, employment, care activities, and own time. Yes, it does find that the LPG reduce cooking time by about 8 minutes per day, but the employment, the compensatory rise in employment was not fully by 8 minutes. It reduces, it only increases by about 6 minutes. There is no significant impact on caregiving time, that the caregiving time remains constant. It doesn't lead to anything else. And there is no significant effect on own time also. So essentially it means this thing that, yes, an introduction of a household technology like LPG, yes, it can have certain effects, but it doesn't mean that when you introduce a technology or when you save time using some technology, it is going to lead women into work. It doesn't always mean that. There are underlying factors which needs to be dealt with, and that is something that at a later point I'll talk about how time use survey need to handle that particular aspect also. Another interesting study that came about in the review of economic statistics recently, but using the 98-99 time use survey. How does children sleep, how is children's sleep affected? Simply by looking at, it's an interesting study by looking at the differences in the time at which sunrise occurs across different across different parts of the country, and how it affects the child's overall sleep. The conclusions are very, pretty much known, but it gives you evidence on this thing that sleep deprived. If the children sleeps late, then you have less time studying, doing homework, and you have more time taking day naps and indoor leisures and so on. And overall, the outcome, the child's outcome in terms of educational outcomes are poorer when sleep hours reduce. Yes, the study gives us some pretty much known conclusions as such as to sleep time, reduction in sleep time leads to lesser productivity. But it is an interesting way of using time use survey actually. How time use survey has been used to identify using an external variable that was available. That is the external variable that is used is from the IMD, from the Meteorological Department, showing what is the sunrise and sunset, and using that data to show how time use is affected for children. So the point is that once we start mixing and matching with other data sources, time use, the ability of time use starts expanding much more. You can have much more variety or different types of studies as such. Another set of studies which I call, of course, all the studies has been on gender, but specifically looking at analytics of gender roles as such and time use. How does time use, how does gender roles kind of shift? Not shifting exactly. How does the time use within specified gender roles kind of start acting out with given context as such? Now, one of the very popular studies has been on this thing by, again, the older study using the 98-99 time use survey, looking at status, caste and time allocation of women in rural India by, the paper was published in Economic Development and Cultural Change. Now, the crux of the paper is only this, that when women do withdraw in the rural areas, the study was largely focused on the eastern parts of India, and in many rural households, women do withdraw from market work, but when women withdraw from market work, it does not lead to increase in leisure as such, but what it leads to is an increase in different forms of status production, and status production they do define in a particular way, and they do show this thing that the time that is spent on status production is what is increasing and not leisure as such. So the withdrawn labor time that is women spent in market work, that leads to status production, right? Now the point here is this thing, consistently across all these studies that I've been talking about, yes, we have these 3 categories of work. If clearly measured, Professor Hirve had already talked about the need for clarity in measurement of all these things. Even when it is clearly measured, if these 3 categories of time allotment is there, it is not very clear where the time is going to go according to a third variable or an intervening variable comes in. When an intervening variable comes in, it is not very clear that reducing time at work would lead to increasing time for leisure for women. There is not much of evidence of that. Or reducing time in unpaid work within households could lead to market work. That there is also not much of evidence as such right now. Whatever evidence that we are getting it right now from this thing, yes, we can say only this. We can say this only because of the time use survey. We would not have been able to say the same thing from the labor force participation or the PLFS surveys as such. This is another study which look at time poverty, and again the evidence is that looking at measuring time poverty and defining time poverty in a particular manner, and they conclude that women from poorer households are more likely to be time poor, and men are not so likely to be time poor as such. What is the definition and all those things? I think that's another set of this thing. So just to show that the expanse of studies, the kind of expanse of studies that are possible using time use surveys, it is possible that time use survey itself can be used, but once you start matching time use surveys with other forms of information, the ability of the time use survey is much, much more. Now let me take you through some micro level studies that has been done using their own specific types of time use surveys. It is not the time use survey of 2024 or 19. These are time use surveys that has been studied, that has been done specifically by groups of individuals and so on. And they have certain other additional aspects that they could talk about because of the way time use was being collected, right? So this is one of the studies that has been published in World Development, Sinha et al., looking at well-being costs of unpaid work as such, gendered evidence from a contextualized time use survey in India, right? Now, in our time use survey, we do have context being defined in terms of time, in terms of the time of the day, and in terms of a location. That's the two contexts that are. But in the surveys that has been, one of the primary studies that has been done, context is defined on a whole lot of other variables. You had household health and care needs, access to child care, elder care centers, gender norms, empowerment, attitude towards women's role and mobility, household durables available, time-saving technology, what are the simultaneous activities, subjective outcomes, life satisfaction. A whole lot of contextual variables are there which is used, and it's a small survey, but the outcome because of that, which is not possible to do with the time use survey today. That is the point. If we have the time use survey of 2024, this kind of a study would not be possible because we don't have that kind of context that is available for this kind of study. And maybe time use survey of 2024 or further, we should be thinking about bringing in more context specific variables. Now, what is the additional thing over here? We are able to measure, this particular study is able to use a causal analysis. It is able to link between unpaid care to labor supply, empowerment and well-being and so on. And it provides you with certain types of clear policy inputs with regard to because of the additional information, that the context-specific information that is available. So that's a learning that probably from the micro-level studies that we are getting. Another study that is done by Garit Pari and published in Development and Change, Microcredit and Women's Empowerment as such a thing. Again, it's a primary survey that is done by the methods are largely similar, somewhat very similar that is done on this thing. But the findings do show this thing that microcredit, when it is going to males, even when it is going to the females, the beneficiaries are not females, it is actually males in the end. The time spent, they measure time spent on this thing, and they do find this thing, the time spent by females on work or self-employment does not increase. It continues to be more or less the same, but for males it increases, even when the credit is given to the females. Now that's an additional information that you can think about, that if you're building up context, where do you get your credit from, and how does microcredit kind of affect your this thing. I'm not saying that all these variables can be brought into one particular survey, but we must think about how is it possible that if data is available from different sources, can we think of bringing them, is it possible at least to bring them together and make analysis that can be, that the data, is it possible to make the data available in such a manner that the analysis can be done by merging these data sets or kind of at least bringing them in a comparative fashion as such. this is another study of a similar nature where they had done this thing where time use survey has been done and all those things. Okay. So let me just go to another study that has been done, a partial time use survey, somewhat of the nature that the CMI data, for example, the CPHS data of CMI, it has a partial time use information about just about work and household information. I mean, how much time is spent on work and how much time is spent on household activities, and some analysis has been done. This is a study that has been done in Ashwini Deshpande, and which show this thing that it's not the partial time data that makes this data interesting. It makes it interesting basically because of the frequency of the data, right? This data was available, the CPS data was available at a monthly this thing, and you were able to analyze this particular data looks into pre and post COVID this thing, right? So you were able to kind of analyze, do a study of that nature because you had some greater frequency in the data. Now, I'm not saying that CPHS is the best data, or I'm not saying that we need to follow the frequency that CPHS is following, but we need to probably think about greater frequency rather than this 6 to 7 year waiting periods as such. Yeah, so I'll just conclude by saying the following thing. Time use surveys is a very rich source of information, but clearly underutilized, with much potential to be used. Currently, it's limited research using time use survey has also limited the reach into public policy making also. Public policy making, we right now, if we survey the literature, we do find that there have been other studies looking at transportation, looking at children's time, how they spend. There are also studies even looking at, right now there are also studies on gig economy, how workers have time being spent. A lot of studies are there, but these studies, because the kind of information that is limited right now, and also the information, whatever information is there, is coming that is done by micro level studies, and they do not is not representative fully. It would mean that there is limited use for public policy also of the different types of time use that is done by micro, small, and this thing. The large scale survey itself, we are not using 2024. I think I have not come across any big papers that has come out from the 2024 survey. 2019, 1 or 2 papers are, most of the big studies has been done in the 98, which was a pilot survey, 98-99 survey, that was a pilot study. Some of the important papers that is coming from that particular survey, 2019, maybe 1 or 2, 2024 till now I have not seen. So it's a rich minefield, we have not used it. Now, so micro study shows that context matters, so we need to build in much more context. There is also another study which I have not cited here, but which Professor Hirve also had mentioned about this thing, that the loss of information by reducing the number of categories and also widening the time slots is very, very less. It's not much that you lose out by increasing the time slots or the number of categories that you reduce. There is a study that has been recent. I think it's come up in the World Development. No, it's come up in the Journal of Development Economics. It's one of the popular journals, and in which they show this thing that they do time use survey 2024 type 1 survey, and they do parallelly different surveys, and then they show this thing that the loss of information is actually very less if you can reduce this thing, and it is time consuming. I mean, it takes lesser time, it's less costly, so we must think of doing this kind of a thing. And we must also thinking how it is possible that these data, if it is possible, if it is possible to kind of integrate it with the PLFS data. Of course, whenever it is being collected, if that data the household can be traced into the PLFS household itself, then that gives a rich set of information also. And if it's possible to convert this into a panel information, at least part of it, then that makes it even more richer, I think so. I'll stop here. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, sir, for that enlightening presentation. Now I request Professor Vinod Abraham to accept our token of gratitude extended by Sri Prakash Shukla, JSO CQCD. Thank you. We now move to the panel discussion on the theme on changing patterns of time use, care work and gender in a new digital era. I now request the moderator and our eminent panelists to take their seat on the dais. The session will be moderated by Dr. Ajay Bakshi, Additional Director General, Household Surveys Division, who brings wide-ranging expertise on survey design and statistical systems in India. He'll guide today's discussion and ensure we cover diverse perspectives. Our first panelist is Dr. Sunny Jose, Dean of the School of Humanities and Sciences at SRM University, Sonipat. His research explores labor markets, inequality and social development, and he brings an important lens on how social transformations influence patterns of time use. We are also joined by Professor Neeta N. from the Center for Women's Development Studies, whose extensive body of work on women, labor and care work has shaped much of the academic and policy debate in India on gender and employment. Next we welcome Srimati Deepti Sharma, Assistant Professor, Ahmedabad University. Her research and teaching bring a valuable managerial and applied perspective to questions of gender, care and digital transitions. And finally, we have with us Professor Tyagu Ranganathan from the Center for Development Studies, whose work on rural transformation, agriculture and development will add a crucial dimension to today's theme. Welcoming you all. With this distinguished panel before, I now hand over the session to our moderator, Dr. Ajay Bakshi, to steer the discussion.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Today, I think already you have a lot of insights about the NSO's time use survey, both 2019 and 2024. And so on this context, as already one of the speakers mentioned, that time is a great resources, and it's egalitarian resources also. But at the same time, how it is utilization, that depends on the quality of uses. That means the power and access and other things. To have this discussion with us, we have a distinguished panel of experts with us. To my immediate left, Dr. Sunny Jose, who is from Dean of School of Humanities Science of SRM University, Sonipat. And then in my extreme right is Ranganathan, who is from Center for Development Studies, and Professor Neeta, Women Development, New Delhi, and Dr. Deepti Sharma from Assistant Professor of Ahmedabad Universities. Welcome everybody. So just to make this today's context is that we are discussing on the issue of changing pattern of time use, care work, gender in a new digital era. Already we have seen the data sets that in the digital area, how the things has been changes in different form of time spent by different sets of household. So I just wanted to ask one simple question. Is this digital area is actually reducing the divisions or reducing the gap, or it's actually only the aggravate the other digital gaps? So this question is to Professor Ranganathan.
Yeah, good afternoon everyone. I think that it's very difficult to say something new given so much has been spoken by experts before this session. But the digital part and the larger part I would want to say is for the inputs in this sense is that in these so time use surveys is representative across the nation. So there are certain things which we are able to summarize, and there are other surveys which seem to tell us many things about, say, labor force participation, digital access, and things like that. So usually some of those data is not collected in time use. So what we do is, since this is nationally representative, the other information is also nationally representative, we kind of link both and say that there seems to be, say, lower digital access for women, then again we see time use in a particular way and we relate it. So one broad thing which already people have told and Professor Girve have told is that if we can collect some of these context variables within time use, and that can tell us a bit more about these relations among these variables. With particular thing, digital access, there is already surveys which seem to suggest that access to mobile phone and all is very gendered in nature. So that if we have those context variables also collected in time use, then we may be able to tell something more on the specifics. At this stage, it's very, we could say certain things, but I would say we could collect certain modules. There is a trade-off, again, like time use cannot collect all these various context-specific things, but I think on digital access, there are certain things on LPG and all they are collecting, but maybe something more on whether each individual in the household has access to mobile phone, is it commonly accessed or is it complete own access? These kind of questions can also be added to tell more on these aspects is my initial views there.
Thank you, Professor. So, your answer I can summarize in this way that we need much more context variable to analyze these things. That's a big part. So, just Professor Nidha, this regarding this care economy. Now, this care economy is basically the two parts. One is paid, another is unpaid. Now, this paid part now increasing because some of the like our apps are developed, some of the institutions are also giving care, though it's not to general overall all sections of the population, but in certain higher up sections of the populations. But do you think that is actually the paid part is measured by MoSPI in any form directly? It's a within the system it is totally it is measured, but whether other way it is measured. If not, then how we can measure it?
Thank you, dignitaries, and also all the research scholars who are present here. I think it's an opportunity for all of us to think about how we use time use and also to think about how we can improve the data source. So let me come to the question about paid care work. It definitely has given opportunity to a section of women because digital access is highly gendered, access to digital devices is highly gendered, and even when it is access, the kind of opportunities that exist in the economy in terms of employment, it's not so much about quality employment. So there are domestic workers who use apps to get employment, so that's one way. And also there are high-end service sector workers who actually is using digital space or digital devices to carry out work from home. And you know, one of the survey that I did in Delhi, looking at co-working spaces where women use co-working spaces, what I realized is that work from home is actually something that limits women's working time. So they have shifted to co-working spaces at least 3 days in a week. 2 days they work from home, where they kind of supervise the care arrangements at home. But if they work full time at home, it is seen to affect their productivity, and also they were seen to get lesser wages, lesser salaries. So there was a shift that was happening. They definitely want flexibility, which digital access provides, but they also are not preferring full-time work from home options because it affects their future employment possibilities. Even when they were working from these co-working spaces, women reported that they were using apps to monitor. They had CCTVs in their homes, and they were looking after as to how the carer is taking care of children, and they were also looking at transport facilities provided by schools, which is also available on their mobile phones. So, they were doing a lot of passive care, and which actually I think the Time Use survey is not able to capture. Because when we did at CWDS survey for ILO, looking at passive care and how supervisory care is very important, we actually found women spending much more than what the Time Use survey gave us. So 2019 Time Use survey came, and we did this survey in 2020, and we found the care work, the passive care work that women provide for child care and other care work was much higher compared to the Time Use survey. I think the supervisory care is something which is missing. And how can Time Use survey then get better understanding of supervisory care? One method we followed was that we had set of recovery questions in the ILO module. So recovery questions did help us to kind of bridge the gap between reporting care work and especially passive care work. So maybe a set of recovery questions could be added to the Time Use survey. That's one suggestion. Thank you.
Modification you were saying. Thank you. Just to take these things straight to unpaid, Dr. Jose, I want to know there are some studies from Niti Aayog. They say that 17% of Indian GDP is unpaid care or domestic services and other things. They have done the studies. And some other SBI research also do some studies. Now, suppose these studies are okay, and we just somehow extrapolate to our household production satellite account to make this total GDP increased. But what actually tangible to the basically to the women who are giving these unpaid services? Is there any policy intervention? Like just I am giving examples. Some of the policy intervention can you see in this light? Some of the state governments are giving some amount of small amount to the women, like in West Bengal, Lakshmi Bhandar, and in Madhya Pradesh, Ladli Bahana, in Maharashtra, Annapurna Yojana, that's to recognize these women, those who are not having anything, to give some amount. Similar things, this from the government sides, and from the say any household sides, because the male member are earning, but they are not recognizing the women member of the things. Due to them, they are at liberty to earn give much time. That's the conditional things. How to give policy can be intervened in this case.
Thank you. In fact, your observation has two components. One, what policy can or cannot do in sorting of this issue. Now we start from that, say for example, in Tamil Nadu, this Kalaignar Magalir Urimai Togai Thittam, that it gives a certain guarantee that money to households, particularly women. And this is studied by Prabha Kotishwar, that recently published that. So what it does, effectively, it does recognize the contribution women are making to the household. Now, are they benefit from that? That makes a different question. That, for example, even calculate the contribution and the GDP goes up, that does it really benefit women who are contributing to that? So if you look at that, then this scheme, like in a college done, which actually says that you are entitled to 3,000 rupees because or some amount, like in other statements, it is actually the first step saying that the work that you do, the task that you are carrying out for the sustenance and well-being of the household are very important. So therefore, the public policy can play an important role in that. Now the second aspect is that, I little digress, but that is very important now, that the duality that Professor Vinod Abraham shown, that women bear the primary task of shouldering the unpaid work in India, in the household. Now, from the time use survey data, we do not know whether they are willing to do this work as a priority, or they are forced to do this work because they want to participate in employment, but they are constrained by time. Now, if you are looking at the way that, for example, like the ambitious goal that India has to achieve in 2047, and if we want that, for that, the enabling women out of this burden of this too much the responsibilities home, and so that they can participate in the employment, we want to know that how much of the proportion of women who actually completely participate in paid work, in providing also domestic work and care work, are doing it out of passion or out of preference or out of compulsion. So only when we estimate actually, even what I say that, for example, like an engineer, an IT engineer, she withdrew from the labor force and she is participating in the complete this paid work after the delivery. So then how much that, which when you pay that, is it the amount that she's been earning, or the generalist pay that you are doing that? Because there are a whole lot of complication, which parameter we are going to do that? The opportunity cost that you are going to bring in to calculate how much that is contributing that, therefore it's also important. So the point, my answer to your point is that it is very important, but to calculate that requires a lot of difficulties, and we will come out with that.
Okay, thank you. That means you want to say there is an absence of data is a main constraint to analyze these things. So appropriate framework is also not ready. Just to take this cue to Madam Dipti, my next question is that there is a big sector of care economy. Now, why here private investment is essential? Because government cannot give the free care system. Some of the states are doing to enable the women workforce to participate at that thing, or some of the policy mechanism like leave and other things that is introduced, but not in entirely informal sector. So this caregiving services or having like creches and other things, where private sector should be coming. Now, why private sector will come? That is the first one. They will come if they have some profit, and they know in the identified area where they can make some investment. So, do you show any light on this matter from the time use data at present? Can you anything you can?
Thank you so much for asking this question. Both as a person who has studied in a management school and is teaching in a management context, which is largely driven by a lot of private stakeholders. Private investment is really essential, and in fact, as a motivation for this, government has also started a subsidy scheme, Rajiv Gandhi Creche scheme, which was earlier implemented but not implemented anymore. In Delhi, there is a particular scheme which is called Pink Pass scheme, which is a transportation subsidy. In several other states, it has also been implemented. So maybe some private firms can also allow for more work from home type opportunities, hybrid mode opportunities for women to participate, reduce their time in commute, or maybe incentivize them to increase their mobility. This is an important arena when it comes to time use and how these types of schemes or these types of initiatives like Pink Pass scheme can implement and sort of address this mobility issues. Whether it relaxes women's mobility concerns or increases women's mental health issues, well-being issues can also be addressed from time use data. And there are several papers out there already by Girija Borkar, Ashwini Deshpande and others who talk about mobility and time use, and it really has both income and substitution effect when it comes to increased investments in such nature. And to one more point I would like to add to what Professor Juice mentioned, that if you incentivize or monetize the care work, given the current time use, it's really hard to measure who is doing what kind of a work. There is a lot of simultaneous activities. Given the kind of culture that we have in India where 2 or 3 generations live together, it is really difficult to disentangle who is doing what, and especially in the kind of activities the women do. It is really important to, and also very difficult to identify what I am doing and what my mother-in-law or my daughter is doing. So it's difficult, but it has to be done in a very tactful manner.
Thank you. So you think that is a one role for society and another role for government. I want to add some. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I think there were two elements. One, you mentioned about the schemes that pay money to women. There is a certain bit of positive element about it that work is valued, but I think there is a negative aspect to it which normalizes this work as only to be done by women. I think we should look at it from that perspective too. The other thing is that, particularly with regard to care, and you spoke about private investment, but also the state, it is if you look at care as a private provision of a public good, it's a public good which is needed, necessary, and if once we start looking at it from that point of view, state has to play a significant role in provision of care facilities and also at least maintenance of the existing care facilities. There are Anganwadis and creches in Kerala, and there are many constraints to even to access them because the timings are problematic. Say there is like 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. So if you have to work and have this access to daycare, then you have to have work that works within that time frame. So the existing infrastructure has to consider the fact that women beyond this publicly provided, a public good that is provided by state, also takes care of needs of women who wants to use this. So, and say there are these again public, it's not that state is not investing in daycares, they also do these Anganwadis, they upgraded into smart Anganwadis and all, but rather than that, how do you increase time of your daycare provision are other concerns that the private sector could also invest, but we cannot wash away state completely and think of only private investment, particularly with care facilities. I think so we need to be a bit careful when we say this because money is provided, it's a good thing. But actually time use kind of says that whether women are employed or unemployed, the enormous amount of care work is being provided only by women. So this again, or household providing money and all, there is a negative element to that which we need to be cautious of while looking at it and reflecting on these things. And Neeta might want to add something on this care and how state could take part in this and how what are the issues with the state's provision of care.
Yago, I agree with you. Like for example, like if you give like a particular amount of rupees to women, then it actually denigrates that the contribution themselves they are making within the household. But squarely, it is also important that we have to bring it to the public discussion. That so long as like women have been doing from like in the 1999, that the data shows that like women were shouldering the private responsibility. Now, is it not time to come to the public debate in policy terms that this work is vital to the survival and well-being of the household, not for the women or men alone, for the society at large. So how do you recognize that? No, is it 3,000, 5,000, 20,000, 2 lakh? That's a different issue. How do you recognize that it is crucial for the well-being of the society at large, for the household, for the members? Then a policy has to tell people that we value this. Now, will it? No, the second question aspect that what Diana also said that will it reduce? Will it reverse? No, it won't. That is what in fact I looked at that 24 data from Tamil Nadu, like though it was too short a period. No, it does not reduce the time spent by women. 15 to 59 in Tamil Nadu between this data, there is hardly any like this reduction happening. Now, will it reduce significantly? No, that needs a lot of important factors. So how do men perceive? Do men perceive that this is only women's job or women's work, or like that they are adhering to the social norm? That we do not know that. But then when we recognize publicly that this is an important activity, not of women, not of men, but of the household for the society, then engaging with men begins after that. No, it's actually engaging with the patriarchy or the masculinity that we are talking about. How do we engage with that patriarchy or the masculinity? Only when publicly acknowledge that this is crucial and what women are making to the household is not just they are cooking or cleaning or something like that, they are making a substantial contribution to the society at large.
Thank you, Professor Jose. Just to make another, to add on this, to make thing more slightly controversial. What we idea is that our idea is that women should come to the workforce. Okay. Now that means we will increase the supply. The number of women workers will come to the workforce. But is the system as a whole, that employer, government and private sector, is ready to absorb these type of things? In nutshell, it will be the otherwise is the lot of workers and then reduce the per worker emoluments. Just this, you have an idea? Anything you can say?
I think without even thinking of what we will demand them, I think it is important for us to enable women to enter labor market. So we should not be thinking at this stage whether people are ready, employees are ready to absorb all that, but we should change whatever our social systems are to enable women to enter, and that includes education, better services like care facilities, and also elderly care. I think elderly care is very important in our society now, and we have to provide for care facilities for elderly also. Of course, what happens now is that it is the household members, if it is not the main person, the woman there in the household, it will be some relative who will take care of it or some other member in the household. So it's always women who are actually burdened with housework and care work, and we have to. And I think I agree with the point that Thiruvananthapuram has made in terms of only the state can take a lead in this. No private sector will come and take the lead. But once the state takes a lead and give directions in terms of policies, then the private sector has to pitch in. There needs to be policy interventions at the state level so that the corporate and other sectors or private players also can play a role. But without the state, then nothing will happen. For example, the issue that he has raised in terms of Anganwadis. Anganwadi centers, the timing could be easily increased. Of course, there will be more requirement in terms of funds. So the government has brought in Palna scheme, which is Anganwadi plus crashes, and it's a very good initiative. But it also has to take care of the working time of people. And if you are trying to increase the women's workforce participation, then that is an important concern that is there. And also in the context of Kerala, we know for elderly care, the state has taken a lead in terms of palliative care, community palliative systems for palliative care, and also elderly care. So these are examples, and I think there are enough examples in our in different states which could be implemented at the national level, and it can take care of the concerns, which will definitely liberate or give women some choices in terms of what they want to do. If they want to be doing housework and care work, that's fine, no one is going to object it. But if they are wanting to enter labor market, the circumstances should be such that they are free to enter. They should be able to make choices.
They should have a choice.
Yes, definitely.
Just to switch over from this topic to another new topic. Okay.
Because it's a time user survey context. So in terms of context variable in this, there is care provided by people within household is captured. I think the survey could collect data on who all provides care beyond this. Do they have access to, do they send their children to Anganwadi or private daycare, or is there any constraints in that? That data, so in a sense, overall care provision, how much it is shared between employer, private daycare, Anganwadi, household, that can be there. Other thing is, now we have data on, say, household help to stay in the house, but say if there are household help who engage part-time, what all activities they do in the household, I'm not sure whether it gets captured. Even that
household they are captured, respective household they are captured.
No, the household help, say who engage, who come to the
Suppose
household.
that household help is a member of that household,
Yeah, if
then
they
it
are
should
not,
be captured.
that is
Otherwise,
there.
it is not captured.
So
So
even-
it's a
but we
hard
could-
worker, you can say. That.
We could possibly capture the other household help who come and do some work in the household too. They say if they come for only care services, they are not considered as household member, but they are providing household help services. What all activities they do typically in this household.
You want to say some networking sampling, from there you have to go there.
No, the household will know that what all
No,
activities they do.
you
They
want to
also
know
come.
detail of these domestic workers?
Yes,
things,
that's what, that can also inform us about how much of care goes into by the external unpaid services that is.
Madam Dipti, now just I to switch to different thing. Now, see, we have data sets. We have this time use survey, we have PLFS, and we have ASUS. And most probably we will have with the surveys also there. Now, this since this paid care work, there are certain we can identify through national industrial classification and in worker conference national occupational classification, and from the service provider the SAC code is there. From the present data set, is there any inadequacy, or if they are inadequacy, how to address the inadequacy? Can you suggest that?
I have come across this NIC code to be very rich, and I myself is working on agriculture and how women who are working in agriculture, they spend their time given the climate shocks that we are facing. So I would suggest that there is need for maybe reimagination or updation, but the current NIC code and the current classification for these occupations that we have, they are rich in themselves, and we can easily gather and merge all these data sets at least at the district level. The one he mentioned, the time use survey, ASUS, and the other surveys that he mentioned, and we can simply take out what is happening at the district level, how people are there, people are utilizing their resources, and how much they are spending their time in paid and unpaid activities, and what kind of income or consumption changes they observe with this. So as far as I have used and the kind of exposure that I have, it's extensive. Of course, there is updation that is required, but we can go to micro level classifications of the occupation levels and the participation reference week also. So as time use gives 24 hours as a reference period for the collection, there can be a weekly reference for participation in employment. There can be yearly participation like PLFS does. So usual principal activity or the regular, which is the 365 days reference activity, that has to be updated in the current time use data, maybe by a reference of a week. 365 would be a lot by a week, and then we have this 24 hours. So that's a good way to use this data.
I want to add to that. In fact, Professor Vinod we are not able to understand from the existing time use survey data that how it is impacting on the well-being of men and women or from the household. So there the synergy between the existing data set that becomes very important. For example, if you have to synthesize and use certain codes that we can broadly analyze and relate without much difficulty, so then we'll get a broader understanding of from one data set from the difference from the other data set.
So one way normally this type of things are doing in the academic circle is that just make the similar household. If you ignore the time criterion, suppose like household type, household size, and say other household characteristic, if you make similar things of a PLFS and same, these are the classificatory variable again collected in some other related other surveys, they are also same type of things are there. So you can make this as a identical sets, and then you can analyze it. Otherwise, to have a given survey, all these data points collection is a very huge task for the field itself, or it is impossible, which will create a lot of non-sampling error. So normally in academic circle this way, but the time gap is an essential point because some survey may be conducted some year T and they may be T plus 2 year. So you cannot, even if you match it, then the context is changing.
Yeah, there is propensity score matching for this kind of an activity.
Yeah.
Propensity score matching, which gives causal evidences on similar kinds of household and how they are matched based on the sum of the covariates that we observe, and we can draw clear inferences at the district level because all these surveys are represented at the district level, and then we can see at different age groups, different income groups, different regional groups how people are moving and utilizing.
Yeah, recently actually some of the organizations are also coming to us for research purpose, and they wanted to do this type of thing, cluster analysis, integrating PLFS data with ASUS and ASI, other type of things. With it is from NSS, so we never done it, that's but academicians are used to do it, and data is available. We can help in that, how to navigate this area. So we invite all the academicians from anything, even not formally, informally you can discuss with any of the division, HSD and their universities also there. So we can discuss and have an idea so that this type of studies can be done, and we can thought of if some variable is essential to between the two survey which is necessary, then we can incorporate also. That way we can.
I would like to add a different dimension. Like it's very important because like some of the trends, the changing trends we are witnessing from the 2024. For example, the participation of younger men in this care work is increasing. For example, another trend is that men from northeastern states, they participate much more, 65%, more than 65%. But we do not know why it is happening. So if you add a certain probing questions, that because we need to know about the exact underlying cause. Unless we add certain probing questions without affecting the quality of the data, scope or something like that, then we will only making what you call an indirect inference. It could be this, it could be that. So it is important, if you want to extend the scope of the survey, the scope of the analysis, and also bring what we call what Professor Veeramani referred to, that evidence-based policy making. We need certain probing questions without much difficulty. For example, if men are not participating, in households, if you look at that, the single most important factor I wanted to analyze, you spend a lot of time, which dissuades men from participating. So then, one of the factors I identified is that in a household, if there is more than one adult female, for example, if there are 2 adult female in that household, men's participation drops from 60 to 40. If there are more than 2 adult female, then it comes down to 33%. So therefore, is it mere the presence of the adult female or the adherence that the idea that men feel that no, there are 3 female available and it is their primary responsibility, is not. So if we can probe certain, ask certain probing questions, they will throw a lot of insight.
Sir, some of these questions are already inbuilt in our demographic profile earlier. So, we defined in the relationship who is the head of the household. Now, there are certain studies based on consumer expenditure, the female-headed households. Now, who is the head of the household as per our definition? Who takes the decision? It's not the aged man will be the headed person. So, though definitely the sample size and reporting other issues are there, but some of the variables are already present in our data sets. You can do from there you can get who is the female head of the household. If that gender is female, then from there you can think these sets of households, what the quality parameter is changed or not. Anyway,
this whole question of whether we can use the time use survey for labor force participation, understanding labor force participation, I think it is very limited right now because WPR that we get from PLFS and the details that we get from PLFS is not comparable with time use survey. So I think it is important to have PLFS, but I think after having done this experiment for the ILO of PLFS and time use survey with a light diary, I think we may have to think of maybe as doing a sub-sample of PLFS, especially in the years where time use survey is planned. So that year, for example, like 2024, if TUS was done for a subsample of the BLFS households and members, one could merge them and see what are actually, then we get a lot of data about employment and labour market participation, which will provide very useful insights into understanding this link.
Thank you. So with that we conclude these panel discussions. We have a very lively discussions about thing. And before, I should also personally thank Professor Indira because she has identified a lot of the things which we are having, especially the 10-10-10 and 15-15, which really I think we should have earlier identified these things. Why this response rate is 10-10-10 or 15-15? It should not be. Ideally, it should not be. Why? Because that's the thing we are unable to keep the capacity building training from our part. It's a drawback from our things. If in future any time survey, we will try to stress on this point to the enumerator that don't, if you have a 2 work, then you don't divide equally. Try to make that how much things, that's the thing. I also thanks others, Professor Ranganatham, Madam Sharma, Joe sir, and Professor Neeta to have a very good discussions. All of your suggestions and the thing we will try to incorporate as much as because we have some committees in there we will discuss. Thank you.
Thank you to our panelists for this truly engaging and insightful discussion, and to Dr. Ajay Bakshi for moderating it so thoughtfully. Today's session highlighted not only how digitalization and social change are reshaping time use and care work, but also how gender patterns remain deeply embedded in our structures of work and family life. Now I request Dr. Ajay Bakshi, Additional Director General, Household Service Division, to accept our token of gratitude extended by Sri Shivaji M. Patel, Director, FOD. I request Dr. Sunny Jose to accept our token of gratitude extended by Sri Anuj Singh, Joint Director, FOD. I request Professor Neeta N to accept our token of gratitude extended by Sri Jitendra Kumar, SSO, CQCD. I request Dr. Deepti Sharma to accept our token of gratitude extended by Ms. Suman Patel, DD, FOD. I request Professor Thiruvananthapuram to accept our token of gratitude extended by Sri Ram Prakash, SSO, CQCD. Can we have a group photo by the panelists, please? We now open the platform for questions and answers. I request Sri Ajay Bakshi, ADG HSD to the dais. Dr. Chandramani Sharma, ADG CQCD. Sri Kishore Kumar, ADG FOD. Sri Salil Kumar Mukhopatyaya, ADG. Ms. Sunita Bhaskar, ADG FOD. Sandeep Kumar Sati. The platform is open for question and answer sessions.
I think we can start now. We will take questions, first 2, 3, 4 questions. Then here the distinguished members are there. They will answer one by one questions. So please, any question regarding time use survey and it related. Yes, yes, ma'am. You should have one mic to hand over to me.
For my own research, I have looked through time use data and I have looked through mostly from the lens of child care. So I have also written a little bit on how the gender role in terms of child care, how within child care, how different activities are taken by men and women. So one issue that I found in the data, particularly when I was looking for 2019 data, how do we capture activities? For example, there are some households with a child less than 6 years, but the time spent by any member on child care, the code number 4, is 0. So how do we interpret that result? That cannot be a possibility. So maybe it's getting captured in domestic activity. So this conceptualization of one activity needs to be clarified. And one more thing that in both the rounds we have a good 8-9 hours being spent on leisure. So is it like many of us who have done a lot of field work, maybe Professor Neeta would agree partly, I think would be that, is it possible that a construction worker has time to have 8 hours on self-care? So how do we combine these observations from micro-level studies where people have said that we could barely sleep for 4 hours or 5 hours? Thirdly, my last point is about, you spoke about policy that we can take out. One thing is about infrastructure development, the time spent on collection of water, fuel. So these are few things I think we should be able to draw.
Hello sir, Vinod Abraham here. Just wanted to get details with regard to who actually goes to the ground and collects the data. Who are the people, what is the nature of training, what are the tools that they use, and how has it changed over a time? Because there has been a lot of talk about this thing, who collects the data from the ground itself. So it depends a lot on what the quality of data actually depends upon who collects the data. Some information about that.
Now I think let me try to answer this question. Sandeep, you give this answer regarding this data issue around household having child, but no thing. How much you have fined, if anything, what sorts of treatment you have given, what sort of treatment you have given And I would like also Sheryl to supplement it on these issues. And leisure and policy questions both are related on this.
First, to answer your zero time reporting in child care, in few cases, in some households, it may happen during the 24 hours period that household member may not have a child, his mother and father staying in the household, and maybe our grandparents who are not a household member, they are staying and they are taking care of the children. So in that case, if that mother and father has not taken care of the children, but the grandparents have taken care, so it will be reported under volunteer activity for grandparents' household. It will not be reported in this household. So this may be one possibility. And your question regarding self-care, I couldn't. Can you elaborate a bit?
So when you look at the average time spent, the average time spent on self-care is very large, which may not be the actual case when we do field work, especially among working.
Self-care also includes sleeping activity.
Yeah, so that's what my point. 8-9 hours in to all spend that.
That's why if you analyze further, you will go both ways.
He has already explained, so it's not necessary to supplement further. But yes, when we talk of self-care, it is self-care and maintenance. That includes the activities of sleeping, sleep and related activities, taking food, family with others. So that's why it may be very high. And in some cases, you will find the leisure activities is also very high, especially for those type of persons who apparently seem to have no leisure activity at all. This is basically forced leisure. They have the time, so they are allocating it as leisure activities. There's a forced leisure which they can actually not enjoy, as it happens. While for the higher income groups, they don't have any leisure activity at all. So that will happen. Regarding you were actually referring to the specific code that will not happen. When talk of taking care of the child of less than 5 years, as block 3, there is one item you are referring to that actually. So what happens in that case that when you talk of care, it's normal cooking food for the baby or feeding the baby is not there. If special care is required, only then it will be considered. That is also one of the reasons that why in some cases you will not find. Taking care, no, actually when you talk of special care, it's normal activities of cooking food for the baby, feeding the baby, taking care of the baby, not there. It's a specific requirement may be needed. That's why that specific item has been included. At the same time, when we talk of, but this is the third issue that you raised about enabling technologies to the household, which will actually stop them from going out of the premises to collect butter or firewood or something like that. We have in fact introduced the technology available in the household that primarily reduces household work, one aspect, and another it also actually gives some other forms of work to the members' participation. That's why you will find the manual washing of clothes as well as you have this washing machine, manual cleaning of the floor as well as we have technology assisted cleaning. Definitely, we did not have that digital intervention or digital technology used by the household, but we have some mechanical technology used by the household. That has impact on how the household, especially the female, allocate work in different activities that they perform. Thank you.
Regarding field, you want to answer?
So, regarding that, still related to who collects the data. As we all know, collecting information related to time use is an extremely difficult task because we need to have details for the last 24 hours and also from regarding all the household members. So, while conducting time use survey, we were using team approach, and we adopted that there should be at least one female member in the team, so that the hesitation to disclose the details of the activities can be avoided, to the maximum possible.
I think you quality of the.
See, actually, in our this NSSO, we are taking up near about 12 to 13 survey in a year. So, some of the surveys taken by our regular staff and some of the surveys taken by our survey enumerators hired through the survey agencies. So, with regard to the quality of the data, we are ensuring that even though the field work has been taken by the hired survey enumerators, it is supervised by our regular JSOs and SSOs, and we have the All India trainings. Then we have, before the start of the service, we have the All India trainings. Then we have the regional trainings in all our regional office where all our survey enumerators have been trained. And also after completion of certain periods, over a periodical, we have the review regional training also. And we have a multi-layer supervision. It is done first level, second level, and we have a different norms for all our officers who are scrutinizing the schedules as well as supervising the field inspection, who actually goes in the field after completion of the field work. They actually check whether the data is accurately filled in the CAPI, because all our surveys is being conducted through our e-Sigma software that is inbuilt in CAPI. So appropriate care has been taken to ensure the quality of the data, and we have also back checked in our regional office. We have also back checked one regional office from other regional office. We are sending to some other regional office, vice versa. They are checking the quality of the data. They are a back check also. So we are ensuring that the quality should be maintained, not only this survey but all the survey.
One question is actually regarding the engagement in sports and games, and creative works, then these simple exercises. So whether people are giving much time, or nowadays what we have been observing is actually people are not giving much time for sports and games and exercises. They are coming down. So regarding another thing is actually regarding the use of technology. So computer for mobile phones, etc. Whether that is used for study purposes or whether for just for games, how much time, etc. Any such details are there. So it's also important in the perspective of health for the children, for all age groups.
In the micro data that is released for 2024, there is no component of month. We know that which round it was collected in, round 1, round 2, round 4, which gives a quarter from which month. But we don't have month-on-month variable. If you can look in the micro data, I have carefully looked at this micro data for 2024 and also in different machines. So I use Apple, I have looked at in the Windows as well. There is no month variable. The other thing is, it was also there in 2019 data. Dates is not available. That is not available. No. Date of survey is not available, from which I can extract the month. It's only TUS 24 which is written, not the date of capturing the survey. The other thing which is very prominent and not been updated in 2024 is the informant, who is the informant of the survey, whether it's the self or a proxy. And I have a academic paper on this that shows these women who are being proxy for men, they over-report time, like anything, be it employment time use, and they under-report their own unpaid domestic work. So this variable, whether it's a proxy or a self, we need to infer. There is no direct variable for this. Yes, yes, yes. Right.
To answer your first question, the there is survey date, we're already in the process of updating it. By now, I think it has been updated. If not, it will be updated soon. We are giving that data. So that was your one concern. Second is regarding informant. It is there. You please check person level 5. Information block 5, item 3, I can tell you if I remember. So that gives you the respondent. If it is self, one code has been reported, I mean, their informant serial number is recorded. Okay. So if you map the person serial number with the informant serial number, you can refer or identify whether it is a proxy response or self response. Thank you.
Another question is this technology, whether we have any codification
but we have in the TUS classification itself, International Classification of Time Use Activities, which we are following for the UN classification. Exactly, you cannot have it, but we have the time spent on socialization. That information you have. This socialization could be through technology or could be through chatting, gossiping, and other activities which previously they used to call the negative activities, smoking and others have come here. But you have some proxy to understand what is happening.
But we don't have how much time Facebook they are spending. Most probably that's the drawback of the thing.
Because how much time they're spending on that particular 3-digit activity. You have to go to the micro level, and you know the person's detail we already have it, gender, age, and then that 3-digit level. You can have some information how much time they are spending in this type of learning activities or leisure activities or sports, jogging and other.
So, thank you, sir. So, my question is, what is the best time to collect data in rural area? So, with concerning with agricultural household and seasonal effect, seasonal employment. So, recently I did one primary survey in Odisha, but I found in particular time, in seasonal agriculture time, most of the men and women are absent in their household, basically from morning to evening. So for agriculture activity purposes. So how we are going to capture this?
With regard to the availability of the informants, that see our enumerators remains in the village for 6 to 7 days. So the availability of the informants is being ascertained if the informants, the head of the family or the person who is having the maximum information, if he is not available, then our enumerator revisits those households to get the concerned persons from where we can fetch the maximum information. So it is not that he is going in the field and if the informant is not there. So he is again visiting those households and taking appropriate care that the maximum, that the information from that informant who has the maximum information, that is to be captured and obtained from that informant. So that appropriate care has been taken.
Just to supplement this actually, and this will also help to explain some of the issues raised again, how do you ensure data quality. TUS is the only survey by NSS which ensures that in a day, in one day, when the people will be in paid, not more than 2 households are canvassed. This luxury we could afford only in TUS. This will ensure, you see, that in an entire day, in entire maybe 8 to 10 hours time period, we are instructing our enumerator to canvass only 2 households. See the flexibility the enumerator has to go in the morning to evening, but at whatever time he wishes. I don't think that this is the practice followed by many countries, or for that matter, any country. So this is one of the aspects that we have introduced, considering the seasonal nature of the work, the necessity to collect information from the person who is to be interviewed. Because it gives me now freedom to stay till I get the person. This is one aspect. Not only that, people like us who often travel, my household is selected. How can I ensure that the investigator remains in the field for a period of maybe 7 days, 5 days, 8 days? How shall I ensure that
my information is collected from me, who is traveling quite a lot. For that we have made a special provision in TUS that you contact the household, then you contact over for when the person will be coming back. I cannot wait infinitely, but for a reasonable period, if I am likely to come back to the household maybe in a period of 15 days, my investigator will go again to gather information. Or at least the household knows that, okay, one person's information is pending. But as I am telling, that to ensure timeliness, we cannot wait infinitely. For at some point of time, we have to stop. So these are the special provisions that we ensure to ensure that we reduce proxy informant. There is no way to make a proxy informant zero. It's no way. And in some cases, a proxy informant may be a better informant. My collection of information is for persons of 6 years and above. Mother knows better what her 6-year-old child does than the child. It is no use that a proxy informant is always bad. If I interview the child of 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, 9 years, 10 years, the quality of information that I will get from him or her, that children, will be, I think, you will agree also, will not be better than if I interview mother or the father. Because mother knows what the child does. Okay, so proxy informant is not always good. Similarly, if you go for we don't have any higher age limit. We interview all from 6 to above. So these aspects we have to, when we talk of 40%, let us further disaggregate and see the age-wise, gender-wise, occupation-wise, what is happening, profession-wise, what is happening. So, proxy informant, we go to Bureau of Level Statistics, USA. We have a proxy informant as in PLFS. Okay, one informant for one household. It's not each informant from each respondent. But let us see, we'll try to improve further to reduce proxy.
That's what Shalini said right one way, but in the earlier morning, Madam Indira Hemant also suggested another mechanism that is called randomizations. So to reduce the proxies, instead of having a pool of households will be there, and we will select the random which one will respond at that one. Otherwise, if non-respond, we will go on that way. But that sorts of innovative technique, yes, definitely welcome, and we have not even piloting these things. So I think these suggestions are very welcome, and we will try to do this sort of innovation in future. Yes.
40% proxy.
Yes, 38% roughly proxy, and proxy are mostly household member.
40% sample is on proxy.
But they are all household member, madam. This is one thing. Anyway, I take your point, and this necessarily can be tackled in the design aspect through randomization. Otherwise, we have to accept the reality, because how long we will keep same way of doing the thing, that's another issue. Yes?
Yeah, got it here. Just a quick question. Meaning, this time that, we probably, some of us are actually listening to the dimensions of, the quality assurance. Just a kind of, internal and thoughts on that. So did you find any difference between the quality when you are outsourcing the data collection process and when it is being undertaken by your own professionals trained to do it on a regular basis? Did you observe any kind of?
We have not done any internal study on this, so we cannot comment on this thing. Had we have done any studies, we can make comment on this.
We have not outsourced it all.
Huh?
We train the outsourced manpower also.
That is already explained by Kishore Kumar extensively, that we are making these outsourced people equal to the regular. It is our endeavor to them equal to the regular. But your question is valid. We have not. After that, our endeavor is actually give truthful results. Any data-driven results is there or not, that we have not. But the two sets of data identification, I think that we have not done. That's the thing. Okay.
Hello, sir. Sir, this is Sita from CDS. My question is, when we see the unpaid work, the percentage there is very high. So, is there any chance this unpaid work will include in our GDP? If it is yes, when? And if it is not, why not? Please.
See, in the, anyway, Shalin will answer it. GDP or marketable, I think SNA is at present is market activities. So naturally, unpaid, any unpaid thing cannot be included in the GDP as per current framework. But in future, any framework is changed, then that can be other thing. But that is not the at present any thought of the process of these things. So currently, it is not there. Yes.
Yeah, my question is regarding work intensity. How do we measure work intensity? Work intensity. Because we have three different activities recorded in 30 minutes, and we also have whether it is simultaneous or not. But based on my field work, especially during morning hours, women do more than 3 activities. And the work intensity is something which is very important. And how do we actually measure that? Because I was looking at the time use data and I didn't find an answer to this. So that's one. Second is regarding the use of mass media, sorry, use of digital technology. Women were complaining about their children's use of smartphones and using it for various, maybe shorts, watching shorts, reels and things like that. And I was trying to actually look, I looked at the 3-digit thing and seeing as to whether one could do an analysis of how youth spend time or children spend time. But I was not able to because the codes are not enough for doing any analysis. So these are 2 things I thought I should bring to your attention.